Today it is the Bicycle Art Project Day. I was asked by a couple of friends to do a custom art piece for their house using a bike they provided, and they want some sort of art thing. We're not totally sure what yet. They just asked it to be made of a bicycle and it's going to go in their office. So I have this bike along with a couple of other bike pieces I've already salvaged off other bikes that I can use for parts and pieces. And I've got a couple of electronic gadgets I want to try and incorporate into this project to make it a little more interesting. Nothing further planned yet, nothing really drawn out except for a couple things up here. So let me show you what I'm thinking. I'm going to start by using one of the bicycle wheels and powering it with this small 12-volt DC motor that I found online. Using one of the gears from the bike, attaching that to the bicycle wheel, that whole mechanism would be attached to the motor in order to spin. Then I'd like to use the bicycle chain to attach to another gear component on here so that there are two spinning components. And all of that would be attached to a plywood base, and I'll make a frame out of hardwood to cover the edges of plywood, but also to make it look a little more finished. That is the main build of this, the two spinning components and the base. And once that is done, I'll be able to go back and add in other parts from the bike to make it more decorative. For instance, I can use the brake lines maybe somehow like this. I've got the foot pedal we could use, also maybe one of the handlebars sticking out of the top. A lot of things that we can do here, but overall, this is the goal I have in mind. But before we can do anything else, we need to tear the bike down and see what parts we have to work with. So, time for the bike deconstruction montage. What I have is a potentiometer attached to a small circuit board, and I found this online, something that would be able to power this small DC motor. And the potentiometer also comes with a on-off switch that acts as a forward and reverse, which is not important for me on this project, but when putting this together, I'm going to want to think about where to put the switch and the potentiometer so that you can get to it when it's plugged in, so you can turn it on and off essentially. I'm going to wire this up to the motor and then figure out a way to kind of temporarily attach it to the wheel to see if I can't get it to spin. So my original plan was to have the motor right here behind this wheel, and that would have been up here somewhere as one mechanism. I'm going to try putting the motor over here behind this piece, having the primary driver be over here on this side instead of all behind here, because I think the weight of this is going to bend down. Let me sort it this way. It's going to bend down the motor spindle, what do you want to call it? The threaded rod on the motor, I think it's going to bend because of gravity, because of the weight of the wheel and gravity itself. So I'm thinking that doing this by itself over here, powering a chain to move this over here, is going to be a safer option. And in preparation for this project, I actually took an old bike I had laying around the house here and commandeered some parts off of that. So I have a bag full of extra bits I can use, and I think I want to use this piece right here as the driver from the motor, attach a chain right here, and then that would then move the wheel. I like this is all one piece and that it's got room that I can use to stand off the back of the art piece. So I think I'm gonna start with this first. Thinking ahead to what I want to do later, I'm going to apply a few coats of a spray polyurethane now, some light sanding in between, and that way the finish on the back piece will be done and complete, and I don't have to worry about working around the parts later in order to get it finished. I wanted to show you what I have planned for the mechanics of this piece, and it starts with this, they call a project box. It's plastic and it's pretty cheap online, and it's all together with 4 screws. And what I've done so far is I've drilled a hole here on the ends, and I've cut out this section here. And so when you open it, here's the inside. And what I found is that these little standoffs on the inside actually work to my advantage for my motor. My plan right now is to use this little aluminum standoff spacer piece. This would go here like that on the motor. And then this slides into there. And then that's how I'm planning to kind of get the motor in place inside of the box. And then on the back side, the piece of plywood, the backer piece, would sit here, and this would stick out in front of the plywood to attach things to, which we'll figure out later. I'll show you how I'm gonna do this, or hope to do it, is that the potentiometer part would stick through here like this, and that sits kind of down in there. And then let me fish this through to show you how this would look. Kind of roughly like so. And potentiometer part sticks out. This has a nice little cap on the end, so you can, it looks a lot better. And then the switch in the top would operate forward and reverse if you want to change the direction of it. And then the whole thing would be kind of mounted like this, and then this would go on top like that. So that's the rough idea. So on the back of the art piece, it would actually be, you know, sticking out like this. This is the plywood, and you would see this part coming out. And all this attach wise, this is just a quick connector to another connector here, and I have basically a 12 volt power supply, converted 12 volt power supply. And then these wires would connect to the motor down below to make all that work. So that is the plan. Get this wired up and put together, and get a hole drilled in the back of the plywood and see if we can't get this to work. time. Here we go. Let me get you caught up on what you have missed so far. In the previous part of the video, you saw the mechanisms in place and working, and for the most part, they're working the way I want them to. There's a couple little tweaks I want to do still, but it's pretty darn close. I have now moved on to the next part of this project, which is making a walnut frame for the plywood base, as well as a walnut frame for the front of the piece. And I won't go into too much detail about how to mill up lumber. There's plenty of tutorials online about how to do that. For the plywood base though, this frame is doing a couple things for me. One, it gives me a ability to take it off of the wall so it hangs away from the wall. Two, it hides the project box back here so you can't see it when looking at it on the side. And three, I'll be able to attach another piece back here, basically a hardware holder, so that you can hang this piece safely off of that additional brace piece in the back. And this hardwood frame, again, I made out of the same piece of walnut, but I just glued the corners for right now. And whenever you make a hardwood frame, it's a good idea to reinforce the corners. Expansion and contraction of natural wood, it's going to blow those corners apart if they're not reinforced. So I'm gonna take this frame over to the table saw and use my spline jig to cut some spline slots in each of these corners, and then put a hardwood in those spline slots, glue it in, let it dry, sand it down, and that will help reinforce the corners. So there's no metal fasteners in these corners right now, it's just purely glue, so you gotta be a little careful with it. But once the spline reinforcements go in, it'll be solid, ready to go. I have done a lot of work on this. This is the third version of this component here. We made the part in the middle, and also a third version of this motor portion as well. Before it was a little loose fitting, so I tightened this up and got it a lot better seated in the plywood. And now I'm gonna try and put these two things together kind of for the first time again with the new components, and we'll see how it goes. I also got a new chain as well, since the old one was kind of rickety. So I'm hoping that this makes this run smoother as well. So let's get this on here. Oh, I probably need to take this off. Let's get this up and mounted and see what we get. All right, moment of truth here. Let's see what we get. A couple little knocks over here, but it is not bad. It's running pretty straight too. Yeah. Here is the base build of this project, and I'm pretty happy with it. It's moving just as I want it to, just as slow as I want it to. So I'm happy, and it's not too far off from that drawing back there that was done a long time ago. So in terms of idea to reality, it's pretty close. And we still have some bike parts laying around here, decorate it up a little bit and make it look a little better. So let's finish this up.